What happens when one of Hollywood's most legendary and notoriously private stars is pushed just one question too far on live television? Before we dive into this explosive moment, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And like this video, because what unfolded next left the studio shaken, the audience frozen, and Joy Behar facing a storm she never expected. The lights on the set of The View burned bright, reflecting across the polished studio floor as the audience buzzed with excitement. Harrison Ford, a man who had defined adventure for generations, who carried an air of mystery that seemed carved from stone, walked onto the stage with that familiar steady stride. He wore a worn-in leather jacket, the kind that looked like it had lived 1,000 stories. His hands stayed tucked casually in his pockets as he nodded at the cheering audience. Even the producers backstage seemed unusually tense. This wasn't a typical guest. Harrison rarely did daytime talk shows. He avoided the spotlight unless absolutely necessary. And Joy Behar had a reputation for poking until someone snapped. Whether she meant to or not, whether it was her humor or her edge, she pushed people. Today, the collision between those two forces felt unavoidable. Harrison took his seat at the table, offering a polite nod to each host. Joy leaned forward first, her grin bright and mischievous, a spark already flickering behind her eyes. Whoopi gave Harrison a warm smile. Sunny and Sarah shuffled their cards, ready for the opening questions. Joy lifted her voice above the applause. Harrison Ford, everyone, Hollywood icon, box office king, and if you read the internet, the most charmingly grumpy man alive. The crowd laughed. Harrison exhaled through his nose, the hint of a smile tugging at one corner of his mouth. "Morning," he replied, low and growly. Whoopi chuckled. "That's about as talkative as he gets before 10 a.m. Harrison shrugged. "I say what needs saying." The conversation started smoothly. They talked about his new film, the stunts he still insisted on doing himself, his decadescent-long love of aviation. He spoke sparingly, but the room was leaning in, captivated by the weight behind every word. But Joy Behar wasn't known for staying gentle. She shifted forward in her seat, crossing her legs, her eyes gleaming like she'd just found the match she wanted to strike. "So, Harrison," she began. "People say you're difficult." She said the word lightly, but it landed with force. "Directors, co-stars, the rumor is you hate interviews. You don't like being told what to do, and you can be, well, grumpy. So, why come to a show like this at all? What's in it for you?" The studio went still. Sunny stopped midnight. Saul looked up in surprise. Whoopi gave Joy a long warning side eye. Harrison's brows lifted a fraction, his expression unreadable. "That's an interesting way to ask a question," he said. Joy shrugged. "Hey, I like to get to the point. I've noticed." That earned a nervous laugh from the audience. Joy pressed on. "So, is it true you're difficult, or is that just a myth?" Harrison leaned back slightly, studying her with the patience of someone who had endured decades of messy press cycles and irritating interviews. "Maybe," he said, "people should stop confusing privacy with being difficult." Joyce smirked. "Oh, so you're private. Is that the word we're using today?" The air tightened like a wire pulled too far. Harrison's voice remained steady, but something colder crept into it. "You're welcome to ask real questions, Joy. But if you're looking to provoke me, you should at least be honest about it." The audience erupted with a sharp, involuntary, "Oh!" Joy lifted her chin. "I'm just doing what we do here. We ask tough questions. And I answer them," Harrison said. "But I'm not here to be prodded like some kind of sideshow attraction." Joy leaned forward, elbows on the table now. "So you're saying the people calling you difficult are lying?" "I'm saying," he replied, "that hearsay isn't journalism." The audience gasped again, louder this time. Whoopi tried to step in. Okay. Let's not do this." But Joy wasn't stopping. She smelled the tension and she leaned right into it. "Come on, Harrison. You're known for walking off sets, for arguing with directors, for ignoring rehearsals. Isn't that true?" Harrison frowned. "That's gossip. It's interviews." Joy shot back. "Then try reading better interviews." The audience exploded with laughter and shock. A few people actually stood up. Joy's smile thinned into something sharp. "You know, you're acting exactly like the stories say." "And you," Harrison replied, are acting exactly like the stories say. The room went electric. Sarah looked like she wanted to slide under the table. Sunny hid her growing smile behind her hand. Whoopi sighed deeply, exhausted, but fascinated. Joy placed both hands flat on the table. If you can't handle tough questions, why come on a show where we ask them? Harrison's jaw tightened. I can handle questions. What I don't tolerate is disrespect disguised as curiosity. Joyce scoffed. Oh, please don't be dramatic. Dramatic? Harrison repeated softly with a tone that sent a shiver through the audience. You think this is dramatic? He leaned forward, eyes narrowing with a calm intensity that made the room's temperature seem to drop. This is me being polite. Joy blinked, momentarily thrown. And then came the moment that shifted everything. The moment the audience would talk about for the rest of the week. Harrison pushed his chair back. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't explosive. It was slow, controlled, purposeful. The scrape of the chair against the floor cut through the studio like a blade. Harrison, what are you doing? Joy asked, her voice thin with disbelief. He stood, adjusting his jacket, taking a breath. Why? Joy demanded. Because if I stay in that chair another minute, I might say something I can't take back. The audience erupted. Some gasping, some cheering, some filming. Joy looked completely stunned. You're not walking out. I'm stepping away, Harrison said calmly. There's a difference. Sit down, Joy snapped. No, he said, turning toward the edge of the stage. Not until the conversation becomes one worth having. The entire studio vibrated with noise, shock, excitement, murmurs, whispers, frantic producer chatter. Harrison's final words before he walked toward the backstage area felt like they hung in the air long after he left the spotlight. If you want me to sit at that table, start with respect. The audience roared. Joy stared speechless. The other hosts exchanged stunned, wide-eyed glances. Chaos unfolded around the set as Harrison Ford disappeared behind the curtains, leaving the view and Joy Behar in stunned silence. The studio's energy did not settle. If anything, it intensified, thickening into a mixture of shock, adrenaline, and something like disbelief that crackled through the room. People weren't breathing normally. Phones were raised. The audience was murmuring in waves as if trying to process whether they had truly just witnessed Harrison Ford walk off the view mid-inter. Backstage, producers were scrambling like firefighters trying to control a blaze. One producer, a tall man with a headset that had slipped halfway off his ear, rushed toward Harrison, who was pacing near a stack of lighting equipment, his jaw clenched, hands on his hips. Harrison, Mr. Ford, please, let's just talk. The producer stammered. Harrison didn't snap. He didn't yell. His voice was steady, almost quiet, but every syllable carried weight. I didn't come here for this, he said. I came to talk about my work, not to be ambushed. The producer swallowed hard. We didn't mean for it to escalate like this. Joy gets enthusiastic. Harrison stopped pacing and turned, giving the man a stare so sharp it could slice through reinforced steel. Call it what it is, he said. Disrespect. The producer opened his mouth, closed it, then nodded helplessly. Meanwhile, on stage, chaos reigned. Joy Behar stiff in her chair, jaw clenched, her eyes darting toward the backstage curtain where Harrison had disappeared. Whoopi had leaned back, rubbing her forehead with one hand like she was trying to avoid saying something she'd later regret. Sia looked like she wanted to melt into the floor. Sunny, calm but serious, stared at Joy with a look that said, "You pushed too far." The audience whispered loudly, some in excitement, some in disbelief, some in disapproval. Okay, Whoopi finally said into the awkwardness. We're going to take a short break, but Joy raised a hand. No, she said, cutting her off. We're not taking a break. Whoopi turned slowly, eyebrows raised. Excuse me. Joy's voice sharpened, defensive and rattled. I'm not going to let him walk off like that and make it look like we did something wrong. Sarah whispered urgently. Joy, maybe don't. Joy stood up. The audience erupted again, sensing something even more dramatic brewing. Whoopi muttered something under her breath that sounded suspiciously like, "Oh, hell no." Joy walked toward the edge of the table, staring directly at the curtain as if she could, Will Harrison Ford back onto the stage by sheer force of indignation? She pointed toward the wings. If Harrison Ford has a problem with me asking a question, then maybe he shouldn't. The audience groaned. Some even booed lightly. Sunny raised a hand to stop Joy. Her voice low and steady. Joy, enough. Joy spun. No, it's not enough. He blew up over nothing. Whoopi finally snapped, her patience cracking. Joy, sit down. The tone was sharp, the kind that silenced the room instantly. Joy glared at her, opening her mouth to argue. But then the studio manager rushed out from backstage, whispering frantically into Whoopi's ear. Whoopi's eyes widened. She sighed deeply. Okay, ladies. It looks like Harrison is thinking about coming back. The room lit up with a collective gasp. Joy's expression flickered. Surprise, confusion, and something like stubborn pride wrestling inside her. Good, she said, because he shouldn't have left in the first place. Sunny almost laughed, not amused, just exasperated. Joy, stop. Backstage, Harrison inhaled deeply, still visibly fuming, but trying to regain composure. The producer approached again. If you want to finish the interview, he said gently, we can shift the questions. We can keep it focused on the film. You'll have support. Harrison rubbed his hands over his face, looking exhausted but resolute. I'll go back out there, he said finally. But I'm not walking into another trap. We LL manage it, the producer assured him. We LL keep Joy in check. The man's confidence was unconvincing, but Harrison gave a stiff nod. Inside the studio, Joy paced behind the table, her irritation simmering. Whoopi watched her carefully like someone watching a toddler near a cliff. Sauer leaned in and whispered, Joy, can you just not? Joy threw her hands up. I didn't even do anything. I asked a question. Isn't that the point of this show? Sunny spoke softly. It's the way you asked it. Joy scoffed. Oh, please. Whoopi rolled her eyes so hard the front row saw it. You need to breathe. Joy, preferably away from the guest when he comes back. And then all at once, the studio floor manager stepped out, holding up both hands. He's on his way. The studio erupted into tense applause. Joy straightened her jacket, lifting her chin as if she were preparing for battle rather than an interview. The other hosts exchanged worried glances, and then he appeared. Harrison Ford walked back toward the table, his expression composed, but undeniably cold. The audience applauded louder. Relieved, anxious, hopeful. He returned to his seat slowly, adjusting the chair with deliberate calm. Joy opened her mouth to speak, but Whoopi shot her a death glare that could reduce a mountain to sand. I'll handle this, Whoopi said quickly. Joy, for once, fell silent. Whoopi folded her hands. Harrison, we appreciate you coming back. Harrison nodded once. I'm willing to continue if the conversation stays productive, the audience murmured. Approval. Joy let out an audible exhale, arms crossed, staring at the table. Whoopi continued. Let's talk about the film. That's what you came here for. But Joy, unable to let anything gay, let out a quiet but clearly audible comment under her breath. If he can handle that. The audience reacted instantly, not with gasps this time, but with irritation. Harrison's jaw twitched. He turned slowly toward Joy, meeting her eyes directly. The entire studio froze. Even the camera operators stopped moving. I came back, Harrison said softly, because I believe in finishing what I start. But if you're determined to turn this into a fight, I'm not playing. Joy blinked, caught off guard. For the first time, her expression cracked, uncertainty flickering behind the bravado. Harrison leaned in slightly, his voice steady and low enough that the audience had to hold their breath just to hear it. You have a choice right now, he said. A real conversation or a spectacle. Joy swallowed, folding her arms tighter. The studio was so silent it felt like time had stopped. Whoopi watched closely. Sarah held her breath. Sunny leaned back slowly, her eyes widening as she sensed something major approaching. And Joy, stubborn, fiery, unfiltered Joy, couldn't help herself. She looked Harrison dead in the eyes and said, Maybe the spectacle is the real you. A collective gasp swept through the studio like a wave. Harrison didn't move, didn't blink, didn't break eye contact. But something in his expression shifted subtly, unmistakably, like a door closing. The entire room felt the temperature drop. What happened in the next moments would push the confrontation to a breaking point that not even Joy, in her boldest moments, could have predicted. The silence after Joy's words wasn't normal silence. It was the kind that carries weight, the kind that makes people shift in their seats, hold their breath, and wonder whether they've just seen a boundary snap. Even the studio lights seemed harsher, the shadows deeper, as if the room itself knew something had shifted too far. Harrison didn't speak right away. He just sat there, still unmoving, staring at Joy with eyes that held decades of experience, loss, battles, and triumphs. There was no anger in his face, no frustration, just disappointment. And that somehow cut deeper. Joy's smirk faltered. Whoopi leaned forward, sensing danger. "Joy, enough." But Joy muttered, "I'm just doing my job." "No," Whoopi said sharply. "You're doing something else." The audience reacted to Whoopi's tone, startled, tense, buzzing with uncertainty. Saw's voice shook slightly when she finally spoke. "Maybe we can start over. Maybe there's a way to recalibrate." Harrison lifted a hand gently. "No, I want to answer." Whoopi gave him a skeptical look. "Are you sure?" "Yes," he said simply. He turned back to Joy, not harsh, but firm, like someone who'd spent a lifetime walking into danger with steady feet. "You say the spectacle is the real me," Harrison said. "But what you're not seeing is that I'm trying very hard not to give you one." Joy blinked, thrown by the sincerity in his voice. Harrison continued, "I've played characters who lose their temper, who break things, who storm out. That's fiction. You want drama, go watch the movies." A nervous laugh rippled through the crowd, unsure if it was allowed. "But I'm not here as a character," he said. "I'm here as myself, and I don't appreciate being baited so you can get a viral clip." Joy stiffened. "I'm not baiting you." Harrison tilted his head. "You just questioned my character again." Joy opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "Look," he said, "I'm not fragile. I'm not afraid of tough questions, but there is a difference between curiosity and provocation. You know that." Joy stared at him, and for the first time in a long time, she looked like she didn't know what to say. Sunny stepped in gently. "Joy is right." Joy turned to her. "Sunny." "No," Sunny said softly. "You said something personal and it landed personally." Joy's jaw tightened. "People say worse things about me." "Maybe," Sunny said. "But you're not the guest today." The audience murmured in agreement. Joy's defenses started to crumble just slightly, but her pride held firm. Her voice came out smaller than before, but still edged. "Fine, let's reset." But Harrison didn't nod. He didn't offer forgiveness immediately. Instead, he drew a slow breath, the tension pulling at the lines around his eyes. "I'll reset," he said calmly. "But you need to meet me halfway." Joy hesitated. The silence stretched long enough that the audience began shifting, unsure if she would. Finally, she said, "All right." Harrison nodded once, a gesture of truce. Sarah exhaled in relief. Whoopi leaned back, grateful the fire had stopped spreading. Sunny smiled softly, supportive but cautious. A wave of calm began to settle over the room, but it was a fragile calm, like the air after lightning strikes. "Let's talk about the film," Whoopi said gently, steering the ship. Harrison eased back into his seat, adjusting his jacket, his breathing steady but slow. "Sure." But Joy couldn't let well enough alone. Even in a fragile truce, even after being called out, something inside her refused to stay quiet. As Whoopi turned the conversation toward Harrison's latest role, a dramatic thriller with emotional depth and complex character work, Joy muttered just loud enough for her mic to catch. "Maybe he'll actually answer this one." The reaction was immediate. A sharp inhale from the audience. Sar's head snapping toward joy and disbelief. Sun's expression freezing in a painful cease. Whoopi close to slamming her tablet on the table. And Harrison, who had just begun to relax, went perfectly still. He didn't turn his head. Not yet. He simply closed his eyes for a long moment as if weighing something heavy inside himself. When he finally looked at Joy, the disappointment was gone. This time it was hurt. Real human unfiltered hurt. "Joy," he said softly. "Why are you doing this?" Joy's eyes widened. "I'm not. I didn't." "Yes, you did." And suddenly, everything shifted. It was no longer about a question, no longer about a legend, a talk show, or audience expectations. It was about respect, dignity, boundaries, the things Harrison had spent his entire career protecting. He leaned forward, hands clasped on the table. His voice was so calm, so controlled that the silence around him thickened like fog. "I've had people yell at me," he said. "I've had directors scream. I've had studios push me until I broke. But I've never had someone look me in the eye and treat me like a joke." Joy's face broke slightly. A crack, subtle, but visible. "That's not what it is," he said gently. "Maybe you don't realize it. Maybe it's habit. Maybe it's your humor. But it's not landing the way you think it is." The audience murmured in agreement, some nodding. Whoopi nodded too, more solemn than before. Joy lowered her gaze for the first time. Harrison continued, his voice softening. "If you want a real conversation, I'm here. If you want to poke fun, I can walk." Joy breathed in slowly. Her face softened. A flicker of remorse crossed her expression, but not enough to form an apology. "Fine," she said quietly. "No more digs." Harrison nodded. Whoopi's shoulders dropped in relief. "Good, let's talk about the movie." But something in Harrison didn't relax. If anything, another emotion crept into his expression. Deeper, heavier, like a realization, like a truth settling in. He lifted his eyes toward the audience, and for the first time since entering the studio, he looked genuinely vulnerable. "I'm going to be honest," he said. "I'm not sure I should stay." A shock wave hit the room. Joy's head jerked up. Whoopi froze. Sarah whispered, "Oh no." And Sonny whispered back, "He's serious." Harrison sighed, not angry, not dramatic, just tired. "I came back because I wanted to finish the conversation," he said. "But maybe this isn't the place for it." Joy's face went pale. "You can't be serious." But Harrison was dead serious. And what happened next would change the tone of the entire show and ignite the moment that would later explode across social media and news outlets as one of the most shocking walkouts in daytime television history. The studio felt hollow in the seconds after Harrison Ford stormed off as if the air itself had been yanked out of the room. Cameras stayed rolling, red lights glowing like warning signals, but the stage felt abandoned, suspended in a strange, stunned silence. Joy Behar blinked rapidly, her face stiffening as she tried to regain control. Whoopi leaned back in her chair, exhaling sharply, the weight of the moment settling over every inch of the set. The audience didn't know what to do. Some stared in disbelief, others murmured, others held their hands to their mouths in shock. One woman whispered, "Oh my God, did that just happen?" And her friend put a hand on her arm as if to confirm that yes, this was real. This wasn't scripted. This was a live unraveling. Sonny Hostin tried to speak first. Her voice wavered, then steadied. "Okay, we're going to take a second," but there was no regaining control. "Not yet. Not after that." Joy shifted in her chair, the tension in her shoulders obvious as she looked off stage where Harrison had disappeared. "Oh, please," she muttered, shaking her head as if she were the wronged party. She forced a smile, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. "Well, that was something." The audience didn't laugh. They didn't even breathe loudly. The energy in the room had changed. It wasn't humor. It was fallout. Producers rushed around behind the cameras, whispering, gesturing, scrambling to figure out whether Harrison was coming back or whether the rest of the interview needed to be pitched out the window. A stage manager approached Whoopi, leaned down, and murmured something into her ear. Whoopi's eyebrows shot up. "Oh, he's gone," she said quietly, almost to herself. Joy twisted toward her. "What do you mean he's gone?" Whoopi sighed, fully turning her chair now. "Joy, he left the building." The words landed like a dropped microphone. Gasps rolled across the audience. Joy opened and closed her mouth. He actually left." Over that, Sonny inhaled and said gently. He felt dismissed. It wasn't an accusation. It was a statement of fact. Joy didn't like the implication. "Oh, come on," she snapped. I was making a point. He didn't need to get dramatic. A woman in the front row muttered under her breath. You were being rude. It was barely audible, but Joy heard it. Her head whipped around, eyes narrow. Excuse me. The room tensed. The woman froze, regretting saying anything, but Whoopi raised her hand firmly. Joy, let it go. We already have enough going on. The air crackled, thick with unresolved tension. The studio lights felt harsher now, exposing every twitch, every breath, every shift in energy. Meanwhile, backstage, Harrison Ford's departure turned into a storm of activity. Assistants chased him down the hallway, asking if he wanted to leave through the back exit. Security escorted him past makeup stations, past racks of wardrobe pieces, past interns, staring wide-eyed. Harrison didn't yell, didn't lash out. He was quiet, but his silence came with force. A producer jogged behind him. Harrison, are you sure? Harrison stopped, turned, and looked at him with steady, unimpressed eyes. If someone invites me on their show, he said plainly, they don't get to talk over me every time I open my mouth. The producer swallowed. I understand. We didn't expect it to escalate. It didn't escalate, Harrison said. I just didn't feel like staying. He pushed open the exit door, and the rush of cool outdoor air swept in like a reset button. Back on stage, Anna Nea returned from the green room, unaware of how severe the situation had become. She stepped onto the stage, noticed the unusual stillness, and frowned. What happened? Whoopi gestured at Joy. She poked a bear. Joy rolled her eyes. Oh, stop. I asked a question. Anna settled into her chair and looked at Joy with a measured, disappointed expression. Joy, there's asking a question and then there's steamrolling a guest. The audience reacted immediately, quiet, approving murmurs. Joy threw up her hands. You're all acting like I attacked him. Whoopi leaned forward, voice calm but firm. Joy, when someone tells you they feel unheard, that's not a sign to push harder. Joy didn't respond. She looked away, jaw tight. The television broadcast tried to maintain professionalism. Whoopi addressed the camera. We're going to take a brief commercial break. Stick with us. But even as the show cut to break, the tension didn't fade. The audience remained seated, buzzing with disbelief, replaying what had unfolded. When they returned live, the show attempted to pivot to another topic. Holiday plans, upcoming movies, light affair, but it felt forced. Joy tried to smile. Sunny attempted small talk. Anna cracked a joke that normally would have landed, but today it fell flat. The energy was off. The absence of Harrison Ford hung in the air like unfinished thunder. Social media erupted within minutes. Clips of Harrison walking out spread like wildfire across Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Hashtags like #HarrisonFordWalkout, #TheViewChaos, and #JoyBehar trended instantly. Comment sections flooded with outrage, debate, and shock. Joy was out of line. He shouldn't have walked out. It wasn't that serious. She talked over him every single time. He looked pissed from the start. That was uncomfortable to watch. The View needs to chill. By the time the episode ended, entertainment websites had already started publishing articles. Headlines were aggressive. Harrison Ford storms off The View after heated clash. Joy Behar question pushes Hollywood icon to walk out. Live TV meltdown. Harrison Ford exits mid-interview. Inside the studio, crew members whispered. Hosts lingered in their dressing rooms longer than usual. And Joy Behar kept her door shut. Whoopi walked past cameras toward the exit, shaking her head to herself. She muttered, "Every week something." Anna slipped on her coat, murmuring, "Well, that's going to be everywhere." Sunny sat at her desk, replying to inquiries from the network, her expression tight with concern. Enjoy. Joy simply stared at her reflection in the mirror, mascara smudged slightly, face tight with frustration, perhaps realizing for the first time how far things had gone. But outside of the show, outside of ABC Studios, the narrative was no longer theirs to control. Fans, critics, journalists, commenters, everyone now had an opinion. And Harrison Ford, he was already in the back seat of a black SUV, looking out the window as the city blurred by. He wasn't angry anymore. He was disappointed. He tapped his thumb lightly against his knee, replaying Joy's interruptions, the dismissive tone the moment he'd finally reached his limit. He didn't regret leaving. Not for a second. The SUV pulled into traffic. Harrison exhaled slowly and closed his eyes, letting the noise of the city fade. Whatever fallout was coming, he knew it would pass. But the clip, his expression, Joy's comment, the walkout would live on forever in the internet's memory. As the dust settled and the episode replayed across the country, audiences watching at home felt the same mixture of shock and fascination. They leaned closer to their screens, whispering, "I can't believe that just happened." And now, as you're watching this breakdown, the question becomes yours. Do you think Harrison was justified in walking out, or did Joy simply push too hard and he overreacted? Tell us in the comments what you think really crossed the line. And if you want more explosive cinematic breakdowns of the most jaw-dropping moments on The View and other celebrity talk show clashes, make sure you hit subscribe, tap the bell, and stay tuned because there are many more stories like this waiting to unfold.